What's up, everybody? I am Jill Reagan. I own Whispering Willow Farm, and I am here with
Donny Greens, and I am the founder of Finest Foods, and also, of course, run my YouTube channel, helping others to grow their microgreens businesses.
Yeah, so we are in the Midwest this week for a fun little collaboration that we are doing with Bootstrap Farmer, and this is the first time I'm getting to meet you, which has been such a joy. But we were sitting here actually last night over dinner having conversations because I grow in Central Arkansas and you're in New York. There's a lot of differences there, and even just the style of growing. Like, you do microgreens, we're in the homesteading world. So we thought it would be a great opportunity just to sit down and have good, genuine conversations, ask each other questions about hardships, successes. So you ready to dive in?
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm super pumped to be here with you. I've been following you on Instagram. It's such an awesome page.
Oh, thank you.
And I mean, we're just starting to grow food for ourselves.
Yeah.
Because we finally have a property now, and I'm just so excited to hear about your story, how you got started, and hopefully save myself some mistakes along the way as well.
Yeah, it's a journey, right? And that's what I tell anyone. It's so easy to see influencers, even me, like there are people I look up to, and I want to go all in. Like, that is my just nature. It's like all or nothing. Like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it.
Yep.
And then realizing, oh, there's a place for this. There's steps you need to put in place, and really going all in and doing all the things. You're setting yourself up for failure, really.
Yeah.
And so those are things that I'm happy to kind of dive into this a bit later, but starting small is really like kind of what I champion around. It's like, start small, figure out certain things you can do, and you really are seasoned in those things, and then additionally add to it. But I think kind of in the culture that we live in, it's go big or go home. And so I'm really wanting to kind of shine a light against that, because there's a place for that, right? Eventually you will have that big aha moment, whether it's success for your family or your business or whatever it may be that you're trying to achieve. But really, if we kind of extend the invitation of like, hey, you can just grow in a container and be successful and have food. You can grow in an apartment. You can grow on 1 acre, 5 acres, 10 acres, whatever that looks like, and still see success. Then I think more people would be willing to jump on the homesteading, farming train, if you will, because they think, oh, I don't have to have 100 acres to be successful. I don't have to raise all my own animal protein to have a farm. You really just kind of open up the invitation that more people are welcomed, and like anyone can do this no matter where you're at. And that's kind of just a message that I've been really passionate about getting out.
Yeah, and I feel the same exact way. Like, when I'm teaching people about microgreens, everybody wants to dive in and create, $1 million business. And I'm like, look, start off growing in your home for yourself and your family. You can learn how to grow that way, learn how to eat the product. That way you can better serve your customers in that way. And you might find out that you hate growing.
Yeah.
And imagine you invest all this money and start a business and are all gung-ho and you don't even like the process of growing. What are you going to do there? So I think starting small is the best way to do it. And we were also talking just a few minutes ago about, I have this idea of like starting with the shortest crop cycles.
Yeah.
Because the quickest return, not only on your investment, but also on your attention, right? Like, and starting small, it's easier, and you get some of these first wins, because if somebody starts a little bit bigger and then has a failure, like, my biggest fear for them is that they'll just like stop doing it and never try again.
Yeah.
So like starting with sprouts, 3 to 5 days, super easy to grow, no soil, no sunlight, like really hard to screw up lentils.
Yeah.
You get that success on your hands, then you move up to microgreens, a little bit longer, you have a growing medium, maybe some lights, then you move into baby greens. So yeah, I'm pumped to hear how you did it. It sounds like you started a little bit bigger and then maybe came back a little bit.
I did. And one thing too, because you had mentioned about failure, something I want to speak on is we should be welcoming failure, right? Because when you fail, there's so much growth. That's where you learn. So granted, we're, kind of talking about things we did because we don't want you to make the same mistakes we did. However, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to fail. And for a long time, I was crippled by that. I thought, oh my gosh, I was defeated. I can't grow food. I certainly can't do this as my job and, create a business out of this. And then it was really this mentality shift of like, oh, okay, I'm going to fail. What am I going to learn through that? And how am I going to do better the next time? So I think if we can all kind of adapt that mentality of like, don't fear failure, like welcome it and then learn from it and do better, and don't ever have to, walk through that failure again. But yeah, we definitely started kind of all in, right? Like, I thought you had to have a lot of land, which we never really lived on a lot of land. We started off on an acre. Our second farm was an acre hobby farm, but we did a lot of varieties, a lot of crops. And that's really from a production standpoint and from a wanting to sell standpoint was really where I kind of shot myself in the foot. At the time when I was getting into farming, heirlooms were like the thing. Specifically where we were in the southern regions, like everyone wanted every variety of heirloom tomato that you could possibly, grow. And I grew over 70 varieties of tomatoes one year. I was pregnant. I was literally 41 weeks pregnant outside harvesting 5-gallon buckets to take to a restaurant that I sold to.
That's crazy.
It was wild. And I was like, I couldn't keep up. And then you'd have like, each of those you really have to like pick at peak, and with an heirloom, like you don't really want to harvest it underripe, even though you're taking it to customer because you lose that flavor. Mm-hmm. And so it was so tricky, and I realized that I was just growing more than I really even knew, and I wasn't able to give each of those varieties the attention that they needed to grow them super successfully.
Yeah.
It's like we were growing a lot and having successful yields, but not like I would have had I just picked 5 varieties, learned everything about those 5 varieties, and grew them well, found a supplier for them. And so really that's when I was like, oh, I'm like working so hard and I've like overloaded myself. Why am I doing this? Like, what is this? But I saw all these other people growing heirloom tomatoes, and I thought that's what you had to do.
Yeah.
And so it was like really kind of finding my voice is like, what is important to Jill? Like, I can get inspiration from other people, but there's that fine line of like inspiration and comparison. And so that was a season of me really growing as an individual of like, hey, you can think outside the box, like dare to do something different. Maybe this is what everyone's doing, but how come I don't get to just make the mark of what I want to do? And like that be the pillar of the standard.
Oh, absolutely. I see so many parallels between like our experiences already. I was told to sell to chefs in the beginning.
Yeah.
I hated working with chefs very quickly, and I knew about the health benefits of the crops, so I went for that target market. So, all right, well, let's dial it like way back. Like we're already getting ahead of ourselves. So like, how did you even get started? Why did you want to start growing food?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So high school, college, grew up, worked on a cattle farm. I went to school for agriculture. Row crop farmers were really like big in our area, still are super big in our area. But when I thought of farms, it was like cattle farms, row crop farmers. I never once put the connection to vegetable farmers. And I was in school for agriculture, had to take all these plant science classes, had to do all these presentations on food production. And it was like, I was introduced to a whole new world. I was like, you mean to tell me I can grow vegetables for a living? Like, this is so much more enjoyable than like roping cattle out in the field and doing all the other stuff. And so I really started deep diving. Lived in a really crummy subdivision in town, like just not nice. Had a David Brown tractor and tilled up a plot in my backyard. And I mean, like, it was rough. And I grew things that I did not even eat. They would rot. Like, I learned a lot of lessons. Eventually, a few years later, like, dabbled in gardening here and there. Met my husband. He worked for a farmer's co-op, so he was very familiar with, like, different varieties. Really kind of in the farming scene. Again, row crop farmers. And so I'm like, hey, I really want to grow food on a larger scale. Okay, sure. So we did it. Again, growing food that our family didn't eat. It wasn't the things I was buying at the farmer's market, but I was growing food because I just was so obsessed with this idea of growing food. And then it's like, I had a conversation with my husband, like, okay, we're literally composting all this food. Like, what's the deal here? Like, why are we growing things we enjoy eating? Like, we're not reducing our budget at all. We're just out all this cost, but no return on investment. And we would grow a few things, but you can only, you only need so many canned pickles, right? And so it was like we'd have all these pickles, but then nothing that we were eating on, like, for dinner, staples with dinner. Yeah. And so
I think Alyssa's sister would actually disagree with that. I think she would probably live on
just
jar pickles.
Yeah. That's funny. So we just continued to grow and improve that. We, bought more, like a small hobby farm that already had a small little greenhouse. Really, I didn't get any of my customers. So my husband, Nathan, would go out and get customers for me. That was something I was not comfortable with. And I didn't even know, like, how do I sell this product? So I'd send him with, like, different squash varieties, all these different heirloom tomatoes. And he's like, hey, my wife grows food. Are you interested in buying it for your restaurant? And so he got me all of my first deals. They were farm-to-table restaurants. And we supplied to a farm stand, which is a locally sourced grocery store. So I sold microgreens to her. When I was getting started trying to, like, fill the gap, right? How do I make money now when I don't have crops that'll be ready for, however many days? And so really just started learning. And thankfully, the chef that I was working with, the farmer that I was working with, they were very considerate of, hey, I'm trying to figure this out. Will you give me a chance? Like, I'm not a seasoned grower. I have grown food, but I'm still like really trying to figure out how to do this at scale. And they were all super sweet. Like I didn't even know, this is how amateur I was. I didn't even know the prices. So I would ask them, like, well, what are you charging? I'm like, I don't know. What do you pay other people? Like, I had no idea. I didn't do my research. And so that was something, too, that I had to learn the hard way of, like, and that's my advice now. If you're even thinking about selling, and you may have completely different advice, I'd be curious to hear, but don't even grow the crop one until you've sold it. But one, like, don't even grow the crop until you know your market, know your prices. There's so much, like, on the front end that needs to happen before you ever sow the seed that I didn't realize until I had sowed all the seeds. And then I was like composting produce. I didn't have a market. I didn't know the price. I didn't know really any outlet and what I was supposed to do with this. So I started growing all the things and then realizing, I need to backtrack. I need to know what, comparable prices are. I need to know, like, is this, the chefs really what I want to do? What about a farmer's market? There's no CSA shares. Maybe that's something that our farm offers. And so those are things that I wish I would have invested in my knowledge in the beginning, because I think it would have set me up for success better and faster. And then instead of going in like, hey, I have no idea what I'm doing, you just tell me and I'll agree, you kind of walk in with confidence, like, hey, here's my price. I know my product's good. I know, that I can deliver, and that when I tell you I'm going to have something, I'm going to have it. Like, you can trust me and my product and my farm and feel confident in that. It's like kind of this scared little schoolgirl, like, if I'll do anything if you just take my products. And I was growing crops that I didn't know how to grow, that I didn't enjoy growing. And now it's like if someone asks me to grow something and I'm not comfortable or know that I can't deliver on it, like, no, that's not one of the things I offer. Sorry, there's a lot of other farmers, maybe go check with them. But it was like that lack of confidence and not knowing, wanting to grow so badly that I said yes to any opportunity. But some of those opportunities, like, bit me in the rear because they were too much. Like, I couldn't even handle what I had said yes to because I was so eager to just be able to work with somebody.
Yeah. Well, luckily, I mean, you identified that was an issue and kind of worked through it. And that's, part of the learning process and making mistakes. And what I do love about what you were doing with the chefs is you didn't go in there with fake confidence. You literally told them straight up, like, this is what it is. This is where I'm at. And they were responsive to that because they saw that you were truthful. Yeah. Which is an important quality.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's amazing. So when you were first starting growing, like, did you have the intention of starting a farm for profits, or were you more on the side? It sounds like that was the case. Like, I always thought that you were more on the side of homesteading first, like growing food specifically for like you and your family, and then eventually it turned into growing for profit. So how did that happen?
Yeah, no. So my goal was always to do this as a career. Didn't really know what that looked like, but now I'm glad that I set that model out to begin with, because as my audience has grown with me, they weren't shocked of like, oh, you're a homesteader turned business owner, right? Like, business was always the forefront. And since I put that out there, my audience has really accepted that. And now as we've grown our business and expanded our brand, it's been received really well. The goal was to, provide enough food for our family. But I was working full time still at the time that we were growing food and selling. I was doing this on the side, working nights, working weekends, raising littles. Like, it was nonstop work. But I knew if I can figure this out, I can do this on a larger scale, which actually ended up looking a lot different than I thought. I would love to run a market farm. However, to run a profitable, production-based farm, I can't do that by myself. And that was a realization. I had a mentor. We had a farm consultant came out to the farm. We were literally going to like line our property with high tunnels. And he gave us like a massive dose of reality. And he's like, the reality is like, you can't do this by yourself. So are you willing to go in debt to hire the people necessary to get your farm started? Like, what are you willing to risk? And that was like, we have gone and like ran our business debt free. That's the value that we stand by. So it was like, oh, okay, am I going to compromise my values to do this, or am I going to reevaluate and see if there's a different way? And that's when we jumped into like YouTube and really started sharing our story and educating and teaching people. And that was a massive like heartbreak for me, because I felt like I was laying down this dream of running this like massive market farm, right? Like, I wanted to be like a boss female farmer and like doing the thing. And it was like, oh, maybe this has to look different to align with my values, which I think like having farm pillars and values are wonderful for any farmer business owner, aspiring business owner, because you can always reference those values. And if it doesn't align, then you need to reevaluate before you say yes to something.
Yep.
So we looked at our values, we looked at our core pillars, and we were like, oh, this doesn't align with what we are, comfortable with. So I started deep diving into education. And even now, until we just bought our new property, if someone asked me if I was a homesteader, I would say no. Like, I don't know, I guess when I think of homesteader, I think of self-sufficient, right? Like they're growing most of their own food, their animal protein, they've got like a dairy animal, they're milking, they're making all their own soaps. And like when I think of homesteader, I definitely just think of like living off the land. And until we moved to our property, and started expanding our animals and doing more stuff like that, do I think, okay, maybe we're venturing into this homestead community that I've seen a lot of people in. And I think that's because I wasn't just growing for myself. It's always been a business. And like having that business model was really important to me. And we've changed how we grow. Like we don't sell any of our produce to restaurants anymore because the scale, right? You have to do it to make decent money wasn't there. And we have a need for cut flowers in our community. And I get double, if not triple, profit from cut flowers as I do from produce.
Sweet.
And then it takes less time, right? It's easier to grow. You can do successions faster. It takes a lot less maintenance. And so it's like, okay, here's a need that our community has. Can I fill this need and make more revenue while doing it? No brainer. So we kind of switched to cut flowers in a large way, and now we are growing all of our family's food needs aside from there are various things, like we're buying a lot of our lentils and things like that from Azure Standard and trying to grow chickpeas, but we still, buy that in a large scale, flour, things like that. But a lot of our animal protein we raise ourselves. All of our plant needs come from the farm, and that feels really good. And I guess that's when I was really like, okay, maybe we are homesteaders. Like maybe we're actually doing this thing.
Yeah. That's awesome. Super cool. And is most of your audience, are they like more on the self-sufficiency side, or are they also growing to sell and make profits?
Yeah, I would say probably less than 10% of our audience is growing as a business. It is all like homesteaders, aspiring gardeners, farmers. Like I think that they've enjoyed seeing my journey of growing, but I'm not like teaching someone how to be entrepreneurs and how to grow food for profit. Like I think they're just backyard growers wanting to be self-sufficient. Yeah,
that's awesome. And that was like one of my passions in the beginning when I first got into this. I realized I really wanted to be self-sufficient and grow food for myself. So I was learning that I could grow lentils in 3 to 5 days on a kitchen counter, and that was blowing my mind. And then I was also learning about, via the YouTube videos that were coming out, like you can start a business called microgreens and like it'll be awesome. And I was like, yes, this is it. Like finally I found what it is. But unfortunately, like the business kind of took over my life, and I was, after you grow so many microgreens, it's hard to even like want to eat them at that point. So I ended up having this business, and I was self-sufficient financially, but I wasn't really growing a lot of the food for myself.
Yeah.
So we're so excited to now be diving into that, growing some food. We're already making a ton of mistakes, which is fun. Like I love seeing weird funguses growing in the soil, and we're like, yeah, we totally screwed something up. And like we planted our starters in the soil months ago, and like nothing's happened. Like, they just don't grow. Like they're just not growing. So, but we do have one raised bed that is doing pretty well. A little bit of different crops, but I think the big thing that we did was like we mixed in a potting mix with the compost instead of straight compost.
Gotcha.
There's a lot of things that I just don't know. And going back to what you said about making mistakes, like I've identified that is just a primary thing that you have to do to learn. And I'm not afraid of it anymore either. After being in business for 5 years, like growing food for myself, I don't care about making mistakes.
Right.
So I was like, I'm not looking up any information. I'm just getting high quality organic compost, which I thought was the right move, and just putting it in these raised beds, and let's go at it. So I'm sure I'm drastically underwatering. I'm sure the soil is getting way too hot for the roots. The roots were probably root bound by the time they got in there, like no drainage. So,
but the cool thing is like even if you screw up, like food will still grow. And that's the thing too, is like you can grow in any conditions. It will grow. Like your yields will be different, right? Like obviously if you provide them with everything, you're going to yield a lot. But I guarantee you this year your garden will still produce something, which is more than it did last year, right? If you didn't have a garden.
Yeah, we've had a strawberry too. Like a few turnips.
Yeah, so tell me your story. Like how did you, I know you mentioned you said you did microgreens, but can you kind of explain to me like how you got started as a business, how you transitioned from like not wanting to work with chefs, who your market is now?
Yeah, so I always wanted to work for myself. Like I always kind of knew I was an entrepreneur. I would just like lay in my parents' hot tub and just think about all these ideas. Like I just kind of like knew like something was a little off about me compared to the other people around me. So that was awesome. I kind of always knew that. My passion for agriculture came out my sophomore year in college because I was introduced by one of my professors to an urban farmer named Will Allen, and he was doing very sustainable closed loop systems, all organic, everything was working together. I thought it was so fascinating. So that's kind of how it got sparked, re-sparked at least, because I think it really was originally sparked by popping string beans off the vine in my grandfather's garden when I was super young.
Yeah, that's cool.
I have vivid memories of that for some reason. So that happened. I started working on a local farm just to see if I liked the hands-on work.
Yeah.
So tons of tomatoes, a bunch of hydroponic lettuce, and a bunch of other vegetables too. I was working the farmer's market for him, so it was great to get some of that initial experience. I don't think I ever really thought I was going to be working farmers markets eventually, but it is how it transpired. Anyways, I worked for him. His name is Teddy Bulkus, Thera Farms. He's an awesome dude. He's still running. His farm was in Ronkonkoma at the time. Now it's at the Sisters of St. Joseph in Brentwood. And he's just awesome. He's crushing it. His farm is so big now. I like the hands-on stuff. And then I graduated college. I was working a crappy job, like walking into businesses, trying to get them to switch out their lighting from like fluorescent to LED because I had a degree in sustainable energy.
Okay.
So like, all right, that kind of aligned. But it wasn't fun. And then once the YouTube videos started coming out, I was like, all right, I'm quitting my job. I had $3,000 saved up. I dumped it all into my business. And I started growing microgreens in my parents' basement, in like this tiny little corner of the basement. So that's how it all started. And at the same time that those YouTube videos were coming out, I was learning about the self-sufficiency of growing food, like the lentil sprouts in the windowsill for my friend Jesse and his father, who now, this is actually kind of important that I was learning this stuff from them at the same time, because the YouTube stuff was all about the business side of things. And it was really focused on selling to chefs. But Jesse and his father, they were really into health. Like his dad was like super into it, like 30 years vegan, mostly raw, like that type of thing.
Wow.
And I remember eating dinner one night at their house and we had salad, but the dressing was something that he was making in his blender by throwing a bunch of vegetables in there. And I was like, what are you doing, dude? Like, what is that? You're going to put that on the salad? Like, don't you have like a bottle of Wishbone Italian dressing in the fridge? So like, I kind of realized, I think I missed out on something, you know, growing up because, you know, my parents weren't super into health. So that was kind of putting off some flashlights or light bulbs, not flashlights, light bulbs in my head. And so thankfully I had the nutrition and the health aspect coming in at the same time as the business aspect, because when I realized I didn't like working with the chefs, I already knew that business was about value exchange, right? You're taking people's money, which is a form of value, in exchange for your product or service. So the value that I wanted to bring to the table and the market that I wanted to serve at that point was the health industry, not the chef industry with like the garnish on the plate. So that was pretty instrumental, because I started doing farmers markets to get the word out about my business. And then I was recruiting people into a home delivery subscription model, just making it super automatic billing, all that stuff, weekly deliveries only. And I was bringing it right to their house. And then I had about 6 health food stores as well. But I'm super thankful that I was learning about the health stuff too, because I would have never really understood or realized that deeper value of the crops and been able to kind of take that by the reins and go down that road.
So were you like hustling? Like, how did you get your product in front of people?
Yeah, in the beginning I was hustling. I was walking into my local town, Huntington, and I was just like walking into restaurants, walking into health food stores, like, hey, will you buy wheatgrass? Will you buy these microgreens? I was getting good responses.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people were growing microgreens. Like, there was a local company named Perfect Foods, and they have really amazing wheatgrass that I couldn't really compete with. But these companies that were buying wheatgrass were giving me a chance because I was more local.
Oh,
because they were a little bit further away. So that was awesome. And then they were also growing pea and sunflower. So it was like I had this huge company that had been around for a long time, but I was still able to kind of pave my way in my own area and do my own thing, because it was just a little bit different, I suppose. Also, I think my microgreens better than theirs. That was the general consensus when we went to head at like health conferences.
But like your community was kind of aware of what microgreens were. It wasn't like this foreign thing, or
oh no, it was totally foreign.
Yeah.
There's like a lot of education I was doing at the farmers markets, teaching them about them. Like, you know, over time I kind of had my spiel that I was telling them, talking about how young they were, and because of that, all their nutrients, their vitamins, their enzymes, it's all concentrated, and you know, the beauty of a seed being like the universe before the Big Bang, and then like once it germinates, it starts exploding and going through these enzymatic processes, and it's like they are magical foods. They really are these living foods. The sprouts, microgreens, wheatgrass. So that was cool. But yeah, in the beginning, I was totally hustling, just like walking up and down the roads, talking to chefs, walking into health food stores. At the peak of my farmers markets, we were doing 3 every week. So Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I was doing farmers markets. And I mean, that killed the whole summer, unfortunately. Yeah. But it was necessary to kind of get the business off the ground. So totally hustling. And then I was really, I really focused in on the home delivery subscription model, which I feel like I kind of almost pioneered for the industry because I didn't really hear anybody doing that at the time, which is something I'm proud of. And paired with the home delivery subscription model, I also came up with this thing called the Sunny Sampler Box, which was all of my products together in one box that became like my best-selling item and like the obvious answer to buy. And for instance, at the farmers markets, I would only put one on the table above the sign-up sheet, and I didn't sell it. Like they weren't allowed to buy that item. Okay. They were only allowed to buy my $5 items and do like a 5 for 20 deal that I was doing. But they saw the Sunny Sampler and they wanted that obviously because they couldn't have it. So it was like, yep, if you want that, sign up for the home delivery subscription, and then we'll bring that to your house every week.
So you had good marketing. Did you sell in like the clamshells with the labels?
Yeah, actually, believe it or not, that was one of the great things of farmers markets was I got to try different pricing, different packaging. And in the beginning, I was selling in like, you know those brown paper bags with the window that you sell like coffee grounds in? Like for some reason, I thought that was an epic idea. And you could barely see the product, like, oh, let me see in there. Oh, it's a leaf. So like, I remember bringing those to the farmer's market. I could fit a lot more in my cooler, but that was not an issue. Yeah. And I was trying to sell those for $3, and there was 2 ounces in each package. And I couldn't really sell that many. I was doing, I don't know, $50, no more than 100. And then I remember switching to clamshells, same amount in the package, 2 ounces. I bumped up the price to $5 and was just like selling it.
I know, yeah. So I dabbled in microgreens for a while because, the internet world will make you think you can be a millionaire. Yeah. And I was like, this is it. This is having to quit my job. We had an herb room, which I called it the herb room because I stored all my herbs in there. But it was just like this little room off of our living room. There was windows, and we just had it lined with like herbs and grow racks with just, grow lights. And awesome. I was like, okay, I can do this. Knowing that, now knowing a market really makes a difference. But I was doing in this plastic bags, which is like your bread ties. And who I was selling to was like, this isn't going to work. Like, there are stipulations on how you can deliver the product. And so for me, I was like, oh man, but like with the clamshells, my price goes up. Are you going to pay me more for that? But then realizing that we sold so much more by doing that because seeing the product, coming up with clever names. So I only did blends. It was like the salad mix, the smoothie mix or whatever, and just had 3 or 4 different varieties mixed together. Made a huge impact. And for me, like adding in colors. Yeah. So I know a lot of people say don't do beets, but like beets actually did really well for me. And then it would add that like pop of color that people were like, oh, I love this. I want this in my smoothie or on top of my omelet or whatever. Yeah. And so I did notice early on, like, okay, there are some things you need to do. Maybe invest in that and it'll get product out the door a lot faster.
Yeah, absolutely. That'll make a big difference. And I mean, the marketing there is perfect too. Multiple varieties all in one. It's a little blend, but you're not calling it like multi-microgreens blend. You're calling it smoothie mix, salad mix. They're thinking, oh, this is for my smoothie. This is for my salad. Yeah. So yeah, that's awesome. And when I start up again, I'm totally going to do a new mix as well, like paired with the Sunny Sampler as a different option of a blend. Because the Sunny Sampler was like everything separate. Although it was in one box, everything was separated. Okay. So, and that was great in terms of like cost of goods sold. 1 box, 1 sticker versus 5. Yeah. But yeah, I definitely want to do a blend and call it just like a straight up salad mix. And I think chefs will take a ton of that as well.
Oh yeah. So what are your top varieties that you're growing and or which ones do you sell the most at?
Because I knew about the health benefits and Hippocrates Health Institute through my friend and his father, Started definitely with pea and sunflower because they were all about those two. Then the radish because it was the easiest to grow, fastest to grow, and you could also get those varieties that had the extra color, and you get the bite with the spiciness if somebody likes spicy.
Yeah.
So that was like an obvious go. And then the last one that I chose was broccoli because that had started getting like some hype and news coverage with the sulforaphane content and the anti-cancer benefits. And it also had been touted as like the most concentrated of all of the microgreens varieties.
Yeah.
So those became my 4 varieties. I had problems with the broccoli because I didn't know how to water properly, and they're more sensitive to water. But eventually I worked that out. And then of course the wheatgrass. I was doing the wheatgrass as well.
So what are some issues that you've had? Like we all know that as a business owner and trying to start a business from the ground up, it's hard.
Yep.
You seem to have kind of like had success with your community as far as just like welcoming your product, what you were doing. What are kind of some things that you had to work through and you're glad that you pushed through because there was, light at the end of the tunnel?
Yeah, I mean, employee after employee, like just coming and going. That was definitely a challenge. In the beginning, it was like learning how to grow the varieties and get them like really good and dialed in.
Yeah.
I realized very early on that systems were incredibly important.
Yeah.
So like a system for growing, a system for customer onboarding, a system for customer billing, a system for how do I know how many trays to grow each week?
Yeah.
So all those were super important. I set those up right away, got the website up and all that. Weird, like I was hiring young kids and they were almost getting almost envious or jealous, but like they don't realize like I started a business, like this is not an easy thing to do. Like you don't just like get these benefits by being an employee. Like you can take the dive and do all this stuff.
Right.
There's a little bit of that. That was a problem with my younger ones. Then the older ones, like because I was so young, that was kind of like an interesting dynamic. But so employee management, I mean, employees are just, people are more difficult than plants.
Yeah.
Let's just face it.
Preach.
So that's a little bit of a challenge. We've had instances where like there's miscommunications, also going back to employees, miscommunications where like we've had an instance where plants didn't get watered for 3 days and like they all fell over and like I had to come in, like re-water everything, like hope everything gets back up. Like we're trying to fill orders, like everything is short because the yields were down. So there's been disasters like that.
So how many employees do you have now, or do you have any employees?
Well, actually, speaking of this issue, we like usually when we're transitioning farms, like we're able to get the next farm like ready to go and then transition the crops out of one farm into the other, like never missing a cycle, never missing an order, that type of thing. The issue with the landlord recently was like he had kind of led me on and said like I could stay there forever and all this stuff. He was going to build me, put me in the new building in the back and all this stuff. A bunch of smoke and mirrors and just like empty promises. The new farm that we're going to be setting up is in the basement of my grandparents' house, which is where we're living now, which is actually where that original passion for fresh food came from with string beans.
Very cool.
So like that's right outside my office window. I look down at the garden. So my grandparents got moved from the house to assisted living, but all their stuff is still in the house. So we're trying to figure out what to do with it. This is kind of like a weird situation, and the basement is just still filled with like these big things.
Yeah.
So we're trying to like get that stuff out so we could do the build out in the basement again and then start the farm back up. So this is the first time where we've actually had a break, hence why we're here in the Midwest and able to like shoot podcasts and stuff because we don't have a farm right now.
Yeah, that's cool though. It's kind of a welcome shift, right? Like I know when our seasons change and it's like you can take a breath of fresh air. It's like, okay, I actually really enjoy this.
Yeah.
Of course, there's the hustle and bustle, which I appreciate what you said about the farmer's market, like having to work on the weekends and how it's necessary for growth. I feel like I get asked often, like, how do you do what you do and how are you successful? You have to be willing to put in the work and know that there are sacrifices that have to be made. And I think that's where a lot of people miss it. Like, you're going to have to make sacrifices. You're going to have to be uncomfortable and you're going to have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
I always try to remind myself this is a season. I don't have to grind like this for the rest of my life, but it's necessary in this season. And I think that whoever's listening to that, if you are trying to do this and make a business either out of selling microgreens or maybe, a market farm or whatever that looks like, know that there's going to be a season where you're going to question why on earth did I choose this? But know that the other side of that is success, it's fulfillment, and it's going to be worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think investing a lot of time in the beginning and just going really hard in the beginning so you can get established and like get over that hump quickly is the best way to do it. Because if you can get over that hump, hire some really good employees that can do a lot of the work for you, then you have that business that you always dreamed of, and you're kind of just like running the show.
Yeah. So what's your biggest piece of advice for someone wanting to get started? Not necessarily with microgreens, like just say like they were like you and sitting in their parents' hot tub. Like there's got to be something more here. What would you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, for any entrepreneur, anybody who wants to start a business, I would say, well, actually, I have this framework that I developed. It's called the EASY framework.
Okay.
So this is actually exactly what I would tell them. So E is for efficiency. The formula is output over input. So you want to get the most output with the least amount of input. That's efficiency. If you can make $1 million pressing a button versus making $1 million, pressing that button 500 times, like you'd rather go for the one press. So that's efficiency. And that could be relative to time, relative to money, relative to, whatever. The A is for awareness. So like having self-awareness and knowing what your work ethic is, because some people want to have like a company like Elon Musk, but they don't have the work ethic like Elon Musk, or maybe not even like the intelligence of Elon Musk.
Yeah.
So like you have to really pair your work ethic with your goals and your dreams.
Yeah, that's good.
Then, and also like awareness of like the surroundings, your markets, stuff like that.
Right.
E-A-S. S is for systems. You need to have those systems in place because we only have so much mental capacity, and the more you're using your brain to get stuff done, the less resilience you have in your business.
Yeah.
Like you should be able to do things without even thinking. Like one of the problems, my dad was doing a lot of the deliveries for me, which was awesome because I was comfortable letting him use my car, so I didn't have to pay him for mileage. He just loves to like think and like he was thinking about the delivery routes and how he can make it a little bit faster. And it's like, dude, I already mapped this out. Like it's literally like spot to spot to spot to spot for you. Like you don't have to think like this. So that's just like a funny example with my dad. But yeah, systems, just having systems in place is so important. And then the Y is for yes, in terms of like action and like taking action, getting stuff done, but also in terms of attitude and like saying yes to things. Maybe not like saying yes to every variety that they want, right? And that's a mistake that a lot of people make and you have to learn. But, having that attitude of like, yes, I can go do this, having confidence and knowing that you can work through anything and figure anything out. It's just a matter of, time and energy.
Yeah, I love that. And systems, that's something that I had to learn the hard way. And now I have an entire chapter, in my book about it, because that was what was going to make or break my farm.
Yep.
It was like, if I do not figure this out, thank the Lord for Ben Hartman. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he has the Lean Farm.
Okay.
And it is, the whole practice behind their farm is called muda, is how I think you say it. It's a Japanese term. And it's like eliminating anything that does not add value. And that is literally his business model for his farm. So I read his books, and it was literally life-giving. And it was like, okay, if I do not figure this out, I'm never going to be successful, because I'm a free spirit, which I love that about myself. But you can't be a free spirit when it comes to like planting schedules or harvesting, or like you've got to have a system. And it has to be just like second nature where you're not thinking about it. And those were things that I would spend so much time, be like, oh, what am I going to plant today? And it's like, spend 15 minutes walking around the farm. Then I got to spend 20 minutes finding seed and gathering up my trays. And it was like, no, on this day, I'm spreading this many sunflowers. It needs to be done by this time. We need to transplant this out. And now it's like so routine, I don't even think about it. And getting like, we have days where we cultivate, and that's all we're doing is cultivating. We have days where we meet with our employees, and it's like, those are our team meeting days. Like this day, we've got guys out helping me in the field, and those are our field days. And it's like, had I not put those systems in place, I do not think we would have seen the success or the growth that we've seen. But not only that, we would not have been able to even manage the new space that we just walked into, because it was triple what we came from. And it was like, well, we got to figure out systems, and like we zoned our farm.
Yep.
So it's like, okay, these are things that take place like daily. You've got to go to these zones. Weekly, you got to go to these zones. And then monthly, you need to check on these things. That's cool. That really just like streamlines so many things for us. And then because I do have those systems in place, there's an expectation, right? For anyone who comes in and partners and helps us, it's like, hey, this is the expectation. This is what I need you to meet. And it's not in a rude, like, work harder, work faster. It's just like, hey, this is the expectation.
Yep.
We need to be done with this by this time so we can move on to this because this is our system that's laid out for the day. And so it kind of helped the people who are coming and like helping us on the farm just kind of lay the foundation for them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Systems, man.
Systems. It's a thing, y'all. Trust me. I tried for like 5 years to do it without systems, and it just didn't work.
And I think that kind of is really the big difference between like a hobby and the business.
Yeah, for sure. A hobby is something that you're just working on the weekends or maybe time after work. Like, it's a fun thing. And granted, my job's fun. Like, this is the best job I could have ever imagined. But if you didn't have the systems, there'd be no growth and there would be no income, which is what's funding, all the other things. And so I definitely came to a place where I realized it was crucial for growth. And if I didn't figure it out, I was going to lose my farm. It was literally, I was being crippled by the lack of systems we had in place. And that took being very diligent. It took me realizing, like, okay, you're not, because in a way I kind of felt like I was losing myself. It was like, I don't want to be tied to a schedule. Like, this is not me. It goes against everything in my nature. And it was like, well, do you want to be successful? Because, like, this is what's required to be successful. Yeah. And that took a friend having a hard conversation of, like, this is what you have to do. Are you willing to do it? And then it was like, I was challenged almost. And it was like, well, I'm going to rise to the occasion. Like, I'm going to do this thing. And it was good. I think it's good to have those people in your life that are going to challenge you and make you uncomfortable, right? Like, and I like to be that friend. I like to be that friend that's like, okay, you don't like this, well, what are you doing about it? Because the option of just staying stagnant, if you want growth, that's not an option. And so that's how I prefer my friends to be with me. And it's naturally how I am with other people. But I do think by being challenged by somebody in a nice way, like not being like, hey, get off the couch and do something, being like, hey, if you have these goals, like, why are you sitting here? Like, what can you do? What are tangible things? What are actions you can start doing today? It motivates you. And I think that, like, it's a great motivating factor. And for me, I love doing this right here, right? Like, I love having conversations with people that's going to motivate the listener of, like, hey, if this guy can do it off of a dream he had and, like, just, hey, there has to be something better. Right? For me, it was an interest that was sparked again at a very young age by my papa, like always working, in his garden and like doing things totally different now than how I was raised doing it. But just like, there's got to be a better way to teach people. And it's like, if you and I can do this and build this from the ground up, I don't know how old you are, but you look young. I'm young. It's like, if we can do this, gosh, like, why can't the rest of our generation do this?
Yeah, anybody can do it. It's a matter of, again, like that awareness. Yeah. And aside from like the business side and like the systems that you have to put in place, which is very rigid and structured, there's also this whole creative side of business that I really wasn't expecting. I thought it was like business plan and economics and all this stuff. But like, you can be so creative with like your products and like what you're doing. And it's so important, like you've alluded to multiple times, to really like do what you want to be doing. Yeah. And not let your business be dictated by other people. Right. And, I think it's amazing for somebody to have a business that maybe brings in 30 grand a year, but now they can, cut their other work hours in half. Like, that's a big deal and a life-changing thing. Yeah. So having, kind of realistic dreams and goals, and it doesn't always have to be $5 million a year. Yeah. Like, you can make a big impact without that.
Yeah. I mean, money does not equal success at all, right? It's fulfillment in life. And so it's like, I'm waking up every day being fulfilled and I'm able to pour out so much because my cup is full that to me, like, I don't ever value my success based off the amount of money I bring in. It's like, I live a good life. I get to teach my kids where their food comes from. Like, they are so aware at a young age. I get to work in partnership with my husband. I get to come and partner with Bootstrap Farmer and like meet people like you. And like, for me, this is like worth way more than any dollar amount that goes into my bank account. Yep. And so I do think that that's important. Like, you can be successful when you don't put money as like the thing, right? You will be successful. When you're not constantly chasing after money and you're chasing after relationships, like, my goal is I want to leave this place better than I found it, right? Like, I want any encounter someone has with me for them to leave better because of it, because I poured something into them, because I sparked an interest maybe they didn't know they had, or maybe I just encouraged someone who no one's ever encouraged before. For me, like, that's worth it. That's why I quit my job to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about enjoying your time, and it's about, your individual human condition that you've created for yourself in your life. So somebody asked me recently on a live Q&A, they were like, when did you become successful? And I had to like take a step back and think about that. I was like, when did I become successful? Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
So my answer was like, I became successful the day I actually jumped in, said yes, and started my business, because that was like that one game-changing decision that led to all this happiness and excitement and like, you know, this whole world that I've created for myself. So
Yeah, I love that.
That's what it's about.
Well, it was such a pleasure getting to know you more and what you're doing, and I can't wait to personally just follow along with your journey. Maybe I can like knock up my microgreen game quite a bit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited to meet you in person, and I'm sure we'll be able to help each other moving into the future. And that's what these relationships are all about, right? Like helping people to grow and avoid mistakes. You know?
Absolutely.
I can help you with microgreens, and you can help me get these 10 funguses out of my grow beds.
Absolutely. We'll talk after this. I'll help you out.
Sounds good.